Hey everyone, Vortex here, and today I'm going to talk about the Snowpeak Ruins. This is probably my favorite dungeon, as it's quite an unusual place. The Snowpeak Ruins aren't a temple, and they appear to be in fact an abandoned fortress that has become the home for the two Yetis, Yeto and Yeta. After Link meets Yeto at the top of Snowpeak, he learns that the Yeti has found a piece of the Mirror of Twilight, which he has stored back at his house. Since the mirror appears to make Yeta ill, the Yetis have decided to lock the mirror away in their bedroom. Eventually, Link finds the bedroom key and Yeta recovers from her illness. However, when Yeta leads Link to the mirror shard, she is possessed and transformed into the boss of the dungeon, Blizzetta. Link defeats her and returns her to original form, and he earns the Mirror Shard as a reward. Despite the interesting location and the potential story behind the Snowpeak Ruins, nothing is ever told of the history of this place. It is however clear that the mansion was not constructed by Yeto and Yeta, and must thus have been left abandoned. Evidence for this is quite numerous actually. For example, the Yeti only use a handful of rooms, while the rest of the mansion is left to rot. The vacant back rooms became home to the host of monsters that invaded the mansion after the second mirror shard came to rest here. The mansion, despite its ruined state, is filled to the brim with expensive-looking paintings, chandeliers, woodwork and carpentry. It's clear that the mansion was once an impressive sight to behold, before the decay set in. Its inhabitants likely affluent knights and noblemen. The sheer amount of detail that went into the decoration implies that the owners were very, very rich. One of the more interesting findings in the Snowpeak Ruins is the display of a peculiar coat of arms, visible in various locations within the mansion. This crest is predominantly displayed on various walls and doors, yet it is not known to belong to any clan in Hyrule. Its shape seems to resemble a winged creature with, what I think are, two rapiers crossing each other. Whoever these previous owners of the mansion were, it seems likely that they were highly militaristic, as the mansion is built like a fortress with several towers featuring gun ports and large armories with the strange coat of arms features on the shield. These armories are full of armor and weapons sized incorrectly for humans, but they seem to fit dino foes perfectly fine. Despite the highly militarized interior, it's probable that the mansion was also intended as a comfortable living space. There's a master bedroom, a kitchen, a chapel, and a library. There are various paintings of the sacred grove and the entrance to the Arbiter's grounds strewn around the dungeon though, making it possible that the owners were either Hylian, Gerudo, or both. One of the more prominent fan theories is that the mansion used to belong to Ashay's family. This is mostly based on Ashay mentioning that she was raised by her father in the mountains. Ashay takes a keen interest in the events of Snowpeak, perhaps sparked by her childhood memories of living in the mountains. The presence of various weapons and equipment in the Snowpeak Ruins could be related to her father's history as a knight and one of the reasons why she was trained to be a soldier. There's one problem though, and that's that Ashay is very young, while the Snowpeak Ruins appear to be older than at least a century. There is one important piece of dialogue that tells me that Ashay lived in the Peak province, but not around Snowpeak itself. She tells Link that Snowpeak is a mountain to the north of Hyrule that is unlike any mountain she's ever known. This implies that Ashay is in fact unfamiliar with the specific area Link is headed to, but knows the rest of the Peak province fairly well. She is equipped with a mantle and a mask shaped like a Yeti, and she is well prepared when you encounter her near the Snowpeak entrance. This means she must have been aware of the Yeti in the mountains, but perhaps not of the species name. Ashay is the daughter of a former knight of Hyrule, but she was raised outside of Hyrule due to her father having trouble with one of his superiors. What this trouble exactly was, or why they had to leave, is unknown, but it might be connected to the Snowpeak Ruins. The Snowpeak Ruins appear to have been abandoned for quite some time, at least a few decades or so. It's relatively well preserved due to the cold, but it shows a lot of damage to the roofs in various rooms. Only a few rooms within the mansion remain habitable. It seems odd to have a fort in a place like Snowpeak, as there is nothing surrounding the area other than mountains and snow. It would be very, very difficult to build a building in the condition Snowpeak is in. It seems more likely that the mansion was already there before Snowpeak snowed over. When you take a good look at the map, you'll notice that Snowpeak is directly surrounded by various different tribes, the Gerudo, the Zora and the Hylians. Whoever built Snowpeak Ruins was likely associated with the Hylians, but remained an independent force. If they were out to protect and defend their grounds, the location of the Snowpeak Ruins makes sense. It might be possible that the Snowpeak Ruins were a fort built after the Hyrulean Civil War, when the relations with the Zora were making progress, yet the relations with the Gerudo were rocky at best. The Zora would grant the Hylians passage through their kingdom in order to reach the mountains, which at that point were still not snowed under. This benefits the Zora in that they show goodwill towards the king, but they also have a barrier between them and the hostile Gerudo. This is especially important since the Zora from this era seem to have no army. In Twilight Princess, the Zora are far more military organized. I have a feeling this is because they were targeted by the Gerudo during the war between the Gerudo and the Hylians, as mentioned in Hyrule Historia. The Zora were not prepared for battle whatsoever, and this could have done them in if the king hadn't granted them protection. This, however, raises a few questions. The Snowpeak region doesn't seem to exist in Ocarina of Time. I believe it actually was there, just not seen for the player. The frozen lake at the base of Snowpeak is theorized to be Zora's fountain from Ocarina of Time. This is supported by their similar climate and location. Just like in Twilight Princess, Ocarina of Time has a Zora's domain as well. Both lead to a lake, which in Ocarina of Time is named Zora's Fountain. Zora's Fountain is surrounded by rocky mountains, and it leads to an icy location known as the Ice Cavern. This place starts to snow over once Link becomes an adult. It seems the place known as Snowpeak was just a regular mountain before and during the events of Ocarina of Time, and it turned into a snowy mountain much later. Now the reason why Zora's Fountain snows over in Ocarina is due to the presence of evil in the Water Temple. But it's possible that the conditions for the region to snow over was already there, but it just didn't naturally occur yet until much later in the timeline. The climate of a region is not set in stone, but can actually change over time, whether the cause is natural or artificial. The evil of the Water Temple simply accelerated the natural process of the region's climate becoming colder. The Zora of Ocarina of Time ended up encased under the ice because they weren't able to get away in time. This suggests the freezing happened almost instantly. Originally, the Water Temple was supposed to be an ice-themed dungeon in the place of the Ice Cavern, so it seems this place was indeed already intended to become an ice region. The Snowpeak Ruins were damaged during the war and were later completely abandoned by the Hylian soldiers and the owners. Due to the uninhabitable climate, it would be impossible for any creature besides Yeti to remain in the region. There is no food, and supplies will be very hard to transport between Snowpeak and Hyrule Castle. It would make no sense for the soldiers to remain there, especially since the Gerudo are no longer a threat. Now the very reason why Ashe's father could have had a fallout with the Knights of Hyrule would be very well associated with reclaiming the Snowpeak Ruins and his nobility. Ashe's father could have requested aid in retrieving his family's former home, but it could have been met with refusal and mockery. Why would anyone want to go to Snowpeak for some old mansion? He would then take his daughter into the mountains to raise her in a way he deemed fit, in order to instill the nobility and strength of her ancestors in her. Ashe expresses a low opinion of the soldiers of Hyrule, describing them at some point as sorry excuses for Hyrule's soldiers. This shows that she believes soldiers should be brave and courageous, like she is herself. Ashe takes a keen interest in the region of Snowpeak, but she doesn't know any of the details about the mansion. It seems she was only told about her ancestry coming from Snowpeak, and not so much about her family's former home itself. That's not too surprising though, as a lot of time has passed since the last soldier left Snowpeak. In addition to the common knight theme, Ashe's armor shares similar design traits with the decor of the mansion. The decorative lines that cover her armor are very similar to the curved floral pattern seen in the iron frames throughout the mansion. These decorations also share similarities to her armor. Ashe also seems to carry an S-stock with her, a sword used for piercing armor. The weapons featured on the crest of the mansion seems to resemble a rapier, also a piercing weapon. This could be a mere coincidence though that both Ashe and the clan of Snowpeak are using piercing weapons. The rest of Hyrule seems to favor more traditional longswords. So in short, I think the Snowpeak Ruins were originally a fortress built after the Civil War and used during the war between the Hylians and the Gerudo. The ruins were later snowed over and left abandoned, until the Yetis find it many years later. Hey everyone, thanks for watching, and if you like this video, check out some of my other Zelda stuff.